Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to the Alpine Mountain Zoo. We've got three very important things to do in the zoo today. Firstly, we're going to be here completing the Amur forest with a habitat for wild boar. We're going to be adding a little coffee stop into the entrance, and then we're going to be here in the Alps, finishing this area with a habitat for an animal we've never built for before, the Arctic wolf. Let's get building. This is where we left the Amur forest, having built our tiger habitat, and today we're going to complete it with the wild boar. Quite a few options for what animal we could have in here. I did think about the Amur leopard as well, but we don't have a great deal of space in this area. It was always supposed to be kind of small, and my original concept for Amur leopard and tiger habitat didn't really make sense once I realized exactly how much space we realistically needed to keep two tigers in the kind of two separate habitats that we've got. So I decided to go with the wild boar instead. A really cool animal and one we've only built for once before. And they're going to slot really nicely into this little space here. So once people have been to the tigers, or if they want to bypass the tigers, they'll come down this path to this little habitat here. And then once they're past here, they'll be going down into the Lost Wilds. It is so fun joining up areas that have been completely separate in the zoo so far. We're going to be joining the Alps onto the Himalayan pass today as well, which is really cool. The join to the Lost Wilds from here will be coming in the next episode along with another habitat. So I'm using the wall that we built for the beaver habitat here. I think it'll be really suitable for the wild boars. We just need to make sure it's low enough on the guest side for them to be able to comfortably see over it, whilst making sure it's high enough on the wild boar side that they can't jump over it. This wall joins up on both sides with the back of the nilgai habitats in the Himalayan pass, which forms quite a nice backdrop for it. It's also smooth on that side. We designed it like that for the beavers, so the boar aren't going to be able to climb out. You might not think of them as climbers, but apparently they are pretty good at sort of semi-climbing with their hooves to get over obstacles and things like that, and we don't want them getting out. One of the things I want to achieve with this habitat, apart from perfectly fitting it into this little space here, is actually having some grass in it. Normally when we build for any kind of pig or pig-like animal, the whole place is a mud bath, because that's what they tend to look like in real life, because they will destroy pretty much anything, and wild boars are notorious for that. But last year I saw a really nice habitat for red river hogs at Plankendal in Belgium, and it was completely covered in grass. It looked amazing. I mentioned it when I did the zoo tour video of it, and quickly in the comments I found out the reason it still looked like that was that the red river hogs had only been there for like a month or something, so they hadn't had time to destroy it all yet. So whilst this habitat certainly wouldn't stay like this in real life, I thought it'd be fun to build one that makes it look like the wild boars have just moved in, just so that for once we can have a bit of grass in a wild boar habitat and see what that looks like. We need some mud, of course, so we're going to put one of the mud baths down the bottom, so we'll use the path trick to make sure that all this nice terrain doesn't get ruined, and then we'll place it down. Just a little bit of fixing up to do there with the smooth tool. We've got some retaining walls made from the stacked rocks that we always use for that. You can see them at the back of the nilgai habitat as well. And then we're going to raise the ground here, give us a nice flat area where we can build a little indoor house. They're very hardy animals. It's not a place they're going to spend too much time in, so we don't need any guest viewing in there. What I do want is something cute that you can see at the back of the habitat. So this building is inspired by some of the really old rustic buildings at Le Menagerie in Paris, a zoo I went to a couple of months ago. There's some hoofstock habitats there that I think have been there since like the late 1800s with really cute rustic buildings in them. So I thought we'd take some inspiration from there, building pretty much the entire thing from the African sticks, which you can recolor to make look like normal logs. We'll get an arrangement there. We've got a little dude here just to make sure it's going to be high enough for the wild boar to get inside. And then we'll make the sides. And I really liked how the logs are arranged so that you can actually see the logs that form the side of the building in front of the logs that form the front of the building. You get to see kind of the end of the logs like you can see here. So we're going to do that. You can see how close we are to the Himalayan pass and the Lost Wilds here. This habitat really does join them together nicely. And then we'll use some of these wooden pieces to make a simple door frame, just to get that looking a bit nicer. And then we'll put a roof on. They have thatched roofs, and actually the thatched roof I think looks best is this one with the bamboo on it. Obviously bamboo doesn't really fit the rustic Amur forest feel that we're going for here, so we'll use some more of the African stick pieces in a slightly darker brown to cover up all the bamboo. And then use some of the lighter brown pieces to create the front of the building where it joins onto the roof. I kind of liked how this was in the original buildings as well, the way the logs are vertical here and then horizontal on the rest of the building. Gives you a nice kind of higgledy-piggledy look, which I like. So once we finish that, we'll just copy that round the other way, paste that back in here, because these African stick pieces have got some nice curves to them, we spin them into different positions, you get a really nice non-uniform look to it, which I really like. The structure of the building's really simple, so we're just going to use what we've already built to create the rest of it, and then we can delete all the extra bits inside that we don't need so that the Boar have got enough space. I want this to extend almost so it's touching the wall at the back there, so they've got loads of room. We'll put a simple concrete floor in, and we'll add some bedding and water and things like that to encourage them to come in here occasionally. And that's the building pretty much done. We'll add a little bit of moss to the roof, and then we'll start making the rest of the habitat look good. We'll sink some of the faux rocks into the ground here and there around the habitat for interest. We will cover the whole thing in buffalo grass, leaving a few spaces here and there. And as always, we'll group it together and sink it down so it's a little more realistic looking. We'll have the enrichment items. We're going to have cardboard boxes, some of the feeders, and just make sure there's a good spread of these around the habitat to get the Boar moving around. And then we'll do some decorating on the guest side of things. So we're going to have a pile of rocks on this part of the wall here. These will cover up the gap in the path nicely and also provide a bit of a stand. And we'll use one of Ricey's fonts to make a pretty simple sign for the habitat. Colour that, get the letters in a slightly more interesting place. That announces the habitat nicely as the guests walk towards it. And then we'll put the barriers in. It'll just be null barriers everywhere. Put a gate in, and we'll use some mesh just on this part of the wall next to the gate, just to give it a reason to be so much higher than the rest of the wall. I think the small gate is too small to use for, well, almost all the animals in the game, to be honest, but certainly the wild boars. And then we'll just reshape these rocks around here so we can make it look like the path extends a bit further into the habitat. And that is the wild boar done. Let's grab ourselves some boar and check it out. As simple as it is, I think the height variations in this habitat work really nicely. The way you can look down on the boars when they're in the mud bath, and then you also get a really good view of them when they're slightly further away because all the terrain back here is raised. A nice little shot into the tigers from this angle as well. And that is the Amur Forest complete. It's only a little area, but I think it works really nicely. We also had some new arrivals as I was building that. The European badgers have had babies, so I thought I'd show you a quick glimpse of those, and then we'll move on to our next improvement. This path here by the Explorers Club monolith takes people from the entrance area into the Alps. It's one of two paths that do that. And I've been wanting for a long time to get some sort of little drink stand into this area. And I think this is the perfect opportunity. So if you remember back in San Bernardino Zoo, we built a fry bread stand that I was really pleased with, using the little pizza stand as a base. And it's got the exact kind of wood and fairly low budget metal look that we want for this. So I thought we'd use it again. With a coffee and waffle stand, that is something that I have seen in almost every zoo in Europe I've been to over the past year or so. We'll add a coffee machine in instead of the sauce bottles, a few changes to the sign. And there we go. We finally have a little drinks concession there, which is great. And we can move on to the habitat for the Arctic wolves. I want to build a really big habitat for the wolves. I want them to have loads of space. And the way it's going to work is we're going to have two viewing windows for them. One just in front of the bridge by the beaver habitat, and one just after that bridge. So we're going to start by clearing some space and getting some more paths in, so we can make sure we know where these are going and that the view is going to be good before we start building the habitat itself. We'll just add a little bit of extra path here joining onto the main path so it sort of extends into the habitat. And we'll do the same at the other side, and then we can get on to building the habitat. So I want a water pool here, and the influence this time is the wolf habitat at the Parc Zoologique de Paris. There's a really nice water feature in the middle of it. And we're going to create it here, but we've got a problem, which is the water level. Because of the terrain on this map, the water level is really low. The guests won't be able to see it. So what we need to do is actually raise the terrain slightly, which will enable us to access the next water level up because it works in 1 meter increments. And eventually, after lots of experiments, we get this. The water is now at a good level, and at guest heights in the viewing area, you will be able to see it. And now we can put the rest of the pool in. We'll cover the bottom of the pool with a rock texture, and then we'll go in with a really small flat to terrain brush and start smoothing out the sides and making sure that the ground is low enough that the guests will be able to see it. And you can see we're going to get a really good view into the pool from here. We're going to create a little bit of a kind of concrete lip around the pool to make it look like it is an artificial pool. We're going to use a few different concrete and limestone pieces to do that, and then arrange these and spin them so you can only really see the curved bit at the front, which just makes the pool look a lot more realistic. Don't worry about where it joins onto the terrain. We'll be covering that up with some rock work and things like that in a minute. But we'll just take this one piece and start copying this around just this front part of the pool, because we're going to have a whole load of rock work that covers the rest of it. It's very fiddly, but it's worth doing for the realism, so happy to get this copied around this part of the pool, and it'll mesh in really nicely with the rocks that we're going to make. So let's get on and make the rock work. We'll be using the faux rocks to make these, mainly this one small one here, because it's got some really interesting textures on it. And while we do that, let's have a quick chat about the animals that we're going to have in here. So the Arctic wolf is a subspecies of the grey wolf. Unlike the timber wolves that we have in the game, this one is actually still recognised by scientists. And their main distinctions are, of course, the white colouring, which is fairly rare amongst wolves, and their range, which is very limited to just a few islands in the high Arctic. They spend their entire lives north of the tree line, which is a very unusual behaviour for a wolf. So they are really interesting, and we have never built from them before, so I'm really looking forward to seeing them. I'm not sure I've even seen an Arctic wolf in Planet Zoo, to be honest. So it's going to be a lot of fun getting those guys in here. Rock work coming along really nicely now. We'll take the piece that we've made, create a variation of it, and then use those two variants spun around in different directions to create the majority of the rest of the first level of rock work. And then we're going to go up a level and create another one using some different rocks and get a kind of almost like a little cave at the back there, just for looks. It's certainly not big enough for the wolves to get into. Just looks nice. I've coloured some of the rocks green as well to get a bit of moss. I'm just going to extend the beginning of the little stream we built back when we built the beaver habitat to get that to flow into the water here, just to kind of tie those two together. We'll just copy some of the special effects pieces along here so make it look like the water's flowing, and then we can use terrain paint and some more rocks to finish that off. And then we'll get on to a little bit of foliage, start putting the buffalo grass in. Going to use the standard and the dry one just to get a bit of a different look. And then we'll move on to the fences. We just built a big tall fence in the last episode for the tigers, and that's going to do really nicely for the wolves as well. We're just going to modify it slightly so it's not quite as heavily fortified and not as tall. And then that'll make a really nice fence to go around this habitat and give us a continuity with the look of the rest of the zoo as well. So we will copy this around this big area here. It's going to be really long, but I want it to be pretty deep as well, so our walls have got loads of space. And then we can move on to building the viewing galleries. So we're going to start with these big sheets of glass and have 3 of those angled inwards on the 2 outside panes. I want a lot of glass in here because the view from here into the water and the wolves is going to be really good. And I also want the viewing area to be really simple, because we don't want to be taking focus away from what's happening through the glass. So we're going to build a very understated glass and metal structure, which just kind of melds away into the background. We'll paint it go away green, and it's going to all be about the glass. And then we'll just kind of meld it into the fences on either side so that our guests won't really notice the viewing window. They're just looking at the view through the windows. We're going to do all of that using this one metal piece. Even the roof we're going to make using this, so we can get that kind of very generic looking, very simple metal look without anything fussy. We'll get some anti-climb barriers onto the top of the viewing structure as well, so that doesn't become an escape point. We can do that very easily just by lining up one of our fences with the glass and then deleting everything except for the anti-climb part at the top. Just extend the roof a bit as well to make sure that all matches up nicely. And then finally, we'll just drop a little bit of foliage in front of it. I have no idea how many of these diamond leaf willow bushes there are in the zoo now, but it is a lot. It's such a good plant. And one of Lion's information signs. And there we go. That looks really nice, and hopefully it doesn't detract from what's going on through the glass. Time for the enrichment items. Always use this bone toy and then paint it white so it looks a bit more like a bone for any of the animals that use it. We'll get a dog ball in because, well, these are wolves. We'll have a rotation line feeder, and then we'll drop some rock arrangements around the habitat to create some little pathways that the wolves will use to walk around. And we'll fill in the gaps between the pathways with our forest arrangement, which we originally made for Belmont Zoo. And then we can just simply go in and delete the plants in the spaces where we want the wolves to walk through. And it will give us a really natural look, rather than placing the plants to sort of line the paths that the wolves are going to use. Because this arrangement is completely random once we kind of spam it around the habitat, when we delete the plants, the edges will be blurred and it will just look like natural clearings and bushes that have been worn away from where the wolves walk. And with just one more tree added in, the habitat is complete and we can go and get our wolves and check it out. Wow, they really are beautiful. Love the colouring on these. Little patches of yellow, so it's not just kind of snow white. I think the fur texture is pretty good on these for a old school Planet Zoo animal. This is the male. He's got his bone here. He's going to take that and have a little run through the stream. shake the water off, viewing gallery working really nicely, loads of room for the guests to see. And there we go, that's the Arctic wolf habitat, and that is the Alps complete. Let's check out the drone cam. You can see where the wild boar habitat and the wolf habitat is. In the next episode, we will be building the final habitat in the zoo to complete the Lost Wilds. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you especially to those of you who've joined the Explorers Club. We have pretty much filled the statue, but don't worry, there's room for more. See you next time.